Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We're positively trucking on here in a Kentucky Derby week, in a post-draft week, a pre-NFL schedule week, and certainly the Yankees are coming. The Yankees are coming. The Yankees are here, and then they'll be gone, and they won't be back as often as they usually are. We got baseball on the brain, post-NFL draft on the brain, but it is our 25th anniversary here at WNST, and we've released a cool documentary. It's called No One Listens, Everyone Hears. My friend Greg Landry was instrumental in putting it together. I forgot his name on the credits when I put it out on Thursday night, so I want to give him a shout out at Towson Transfers. And a lot of folks out there have old VHS, old media of different kinds, DVD. God bless you if you had one of those picture disc things. I don't know what to do, but Greg can transfer all of that and bring it back to life. If you've had a child with a wedding, you with a wedding, birth of a child, any of that kind of old stuff that's on cellophane, Polaroid, wherever it is, Instamatic, he can make it automatic for the people and digitize it for you. We've been doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour presented by the Maryland Lottery with our friends. I've been giving these Pac-Man scratch-offs away. I was at Greenmount Bowl in Hampstead last Wednesday, Carroll County, watching the Orioles and the Angels, telling the history of the horse racing industry and then the future of the horse racing industry. I mean, it was an enlightening couple of hours of conversation with Alan Foreman and David Richardson, and I highly recommend that you give it a listen. Also spent time with Thuru Vignaraja as well as Sheila Dixon before at Fadley's, and Alicia and Damie. I am going to be the MC of the crab races at Lexington Market. This is what you get when you're 25 years into this. You get to be the MC. They don't want me to be a crab jockey. I was so lousy last year, and BJ Suroff kicked my ass, so he's the defending champion. I have quacked out now, and I will just be a community representative. Dennis Koulatsos is walking the earth out there somewhere after this draft. He hasn't been on in a couple of weeks. Last time I had you on, Jackson Holiday wasn't up yet. Then he came up. Then he's out. The Capitals were in. Now they're out. Have I had you on since Rubenstein bought the team? Have you been on in the last? It's only been 4 weeks, man. I mean, stuff's happening fast around here, including documentaries. How are you? How are things at Coons Baltimore Ford? How's your draft card?
Yeah, things are going well at Coons Ford of Baltimore, but I've got to talk about Lexington Market. You know, my deep ties to the market. My dad, God rest his soul, had Mount Olympus in there, and I remember the crab races very, very well. And I'm glad that you're no better person that can think of, Nestor, than you to MC the event.
You know what? I'm going to have to ask the folks. Alicia's in on this, that she's looking for people like you who remember the glory of the original crab races and crab derby. It is the 16th. It is in the afternoon. I'll tell you what, Dennis, and this is, from my heart. Two of the last 3 Fridays, I've walked into Lexington Market, backed my car up onto the dock, grabbed my stuff, brought it in, set up, tried to figure out where we're going to set up in the new place because we want the old sign in it. We really can't get the Fadley's neon in because it's a little higher. The new space they have there, I've been there 3 times now in the last month. Feels like I've been there a million years. It feels like an old glove, like old furniture. And more than that, the place is really vibrant, man.
Right.
Like if you show up there at 12:30, 1 o'clock on Friday, you will think the market's been there 100 years, clean, active, all the stalls, lines, food, the smells, the
Nice.
sound of the market. It's all there for you. I want you to come see it and come down one Friday with me next couple of weeks when the Orioles are home and come do the show for an hour. Just tell some stories. It would be great if you do it before the Crab Derby, but the new market's pretty cool. And it's 3 blocks. They moved it a block closer to Camden Yards for you. So it's even a block closer.
Well, Baltimore deserves a great market. The market is historic. It's been in existence for many, many years. I know that you have deep ties to it as I do, and it's an iconic place. It's truly a unique place, one of a kind. And I do encourage all of our listeners to pay a visit, and I will certainly come down there and say hi to some old friends now as we're all getting up there in age.
You know that old cola sign that hung over the front that had signage in it as you would
Yes.
come in off the Packard Street side on the backside. For me, it was like I didn't go back and see it one. I have a picture of me and Don Moeller in front of it, and I know that your Mount Olympus was in that area too, and the
Yep.
Fadley stall in the back. But I have very few memories, and I did feature my grandmother in the documentary. She's in it in one slide. My mother's mother was in it, not my mother's father, because I didn't really like him all that much, and I have pictures, but it's okay. Um, and I featured her in just that one slide, and I have pictures, and I have less than a handful of memories. You know what I mean? I remember her being at the Bob's Big Boy on Merritt Boulevard, where we had my first communion in second grade, 19, right before she died, with a big tank of oxygen. She was an emphysema person, but I remember vividly walking into Lexington Market with her and falling in love with this pink elephant on the wall that was like a decorative thing. And she wound up buying the whole set for me and decorating my room and my grandmother's room. But that's the only like memory I have of her like moving and doing well was at Lexington Market. So it
Right.
is amazing. I don't know like about memories and when I came into you, but you're the first person I've had on the show, Dennis Koulatsos, and we're going to talk draft, who has actually seen the documentary. Like, I haven't talked to my wife this weekend. She was running around Charleston and Savannah with her sisters and her mother and having fun and eating food and doing all that. She knew I had the draft. I had baseball. Like I went to New York and disappeared for a day. So like, tell me, do tell. I didn't know. Like you didn't send me any feedback. What you watched the doc?
No,
How did it
no,
go?
because you know what, as you said, there's a lot going on between the Orioles, the NFL draft, and life in general. I was able to view it, and it was again chock full of history, chock full of great memories. And you are an iconic broadcaster. You are the one. You're one of one in Baltimore broadcasting history. You're a walking encyclopedia. That's what I tell people out there. There's no one better, nobody better, and you represent the city like nobody else does, Nestor. So kudos. It was very well produced documentary, and look, and I encourage all of our listeners to take a look at it. It's definitely worth their time to look at it for
Well,
sure.
I tell you what was worth a look this weekend was in and out of the draft with baseball on the brain and baseball as a backdrop. And just to throw this in again, we went up unrepresented this weekend at the Orioles games because they haven't allowed me a credential. I'm under review, whatever that means. Go ask. I don't even know who to ask.
So
Greg
you're under the
Bader.
hood, just like the NFL. You're under the hood now. They're look at least they're looking at it.
Well, there's a 36-minute documentary there which express why I should have a press credential and that I'm a real media guy. And that John Stedman said he'd send me anywhere in the world. And if that's good enough, you know,
Oh, you know what?
Chad
You and I.
Steele and Greg Bader passing judgment upon me, I shall laugh in their face. But nonetheless, we did not have a representative Friday night covering the game because they only allow Luke in the seat, and Luke was covering the draft. So I mean, it's been a long, long time. And I think back even to my father in the early 70s when your family came to America from Greece and your father came, and you mentioned 72, 3, 4. It's been really since 69, 70, 71 where the football and the baseball team have collided in this sort of a way with prosperity. And it's
Yeah.
really, it's a beautiful thing to see where we have decisions to make. And the draft really took a back seat to baseball this week with Kimbrel blowing games and the Yankees coming in. The draft was a little more quiet. They pick late, but the offensive line will not be quiet once they have to go play football. And these picks come off the board. And I mean, we stand a little bit on the outside saying you must really like the offensive lineman you have, Eric.
We'll circle back to the draft momentarily, but Sunday, Nestor, I fished the Susquehanna with Ken Penrod, and we brought up your name because he brought up Bill Burton, and I believe Bill Burton was a writer for the News American. Then we talked about Lefty
At the
Cray,
Evening Sun, but go ahead.
the Evening Sun. Anyway, we talked about Bill Burton, Lefty Cray, and we talked about you as well. So Ken Penrod sends his regards. He's doing real well. But we caught the smallmouth on the Susquehanna Sunday.
Dennis, when I did the tour, the crab cake tour 2 summers ago, the original 30-day crab cake tour, I made a point that my wife and I would go to Ocean Odyssey. If you don't know where Ocean Odyssey is, you've passed it a million times. It is right on the east side of the bridge in Cambridge. You pass the bridge, the long bridge where there used to be a smaller bridge below, and you pass it. And you used to go past, you used to suck on a chili dog outside the Tasty Freeze. But this is in Cambridge. So you go into Cambridge and you have red lights. At that first red light, when you pull into Cambridge, if you were to make a right, and you would wind up going to some of the best crab picking facilities and where all the boats on the chop tank let the crabs out. But on the left, there's Ocean Odyssey, excuse me, Ocean Odyssey. And it's been there 50 years. Great crab cake, great fresh seafood, true blue. They only serve Maryland crab meat there, so it tastes better for sure. But the bridge, right where the bridge lets off, is the Bill Burton Bridge. It
Right.
used to be the 50 bridge when you were a boy and I was a boy. Our fathers would drive us across that. They built the bigger bridge. They made the lower bridge a fishing pier. You'll always see people fishing off of it. It used to be the main pier, and that is the Bill Burton Bridge. Bill Burton's a legend. It was a colleague of mine. He was very kind to me, and I swore to Greg Landry that it wouldn't take me a day, a week to regret things that aren't in the documentary. And you've just reminded me that I did author the Bill Burton Fishing Report as a special correspondent on a handful of occasions. And I found one of the clips of me bragging about what was going with you. Captain Buddy Harrison was saying that the largemouth perch, I'm making that up. I know there's no such thing. We're biting in the Seneca Creek. I'm making that up. Like I had to write a fishing report, and I don't know a bobber from a weight. I didn't know lefty.
And you didn't have AI back there to write it for you, so you couldn't you couldn't just hit a button on a computer, which is hot garbage these days, which is another story for another day. But
You know anything about Bill Burton at all?
I used to read his articles all the time. But now personally, I don't know anything about him. But I was I've been a lifelong fisherman, so I did read a lot of his articles.
Well, so when I was a boy, and this reminds me of my grandmother because my grandparents, we watched the news at their house, and I would go over and on a Friday night, and Donnie and Marie was on. Give you the era, Cher, Donnie and Marie, early '70s, right?
Sure.
Good times, right? So Good Times was on Tuesday night, but that wasn't Friday night. But I'm with you. Willona,
Good times and happy days. I was just saying good times in general, but you're right. It's a great segue. Good times, happy days.
Laverne and Shirley, right?
All the good stuff.
All the classics, right? And I've lost my train of thought now. I was going to say something about, you gave me something about an early '70s reference.
Bill Burton.
Bill Burton. So I was over at my grandparents' house, and they would watch the Saturday and Sunday news, and on the weekends they would have a fishing report at Channel 2. And this is the old Professor Kerr, Stu Kerr, Professor Cool's Fun School, right? So this is Channel 2. Zeman would be the greatest guy to talk to about this. Bill Burton had fish. He had magnetic fish that he would put on the state of Maryland, and he would put a red fish, a yellow fish, a gray fish, a white fish, and he would tell you where the fish were biting on the water. And I'm 5 years old, 6 years old. And here's the other thing about Bill Burton. And if you knew anything about Bill Burton at all, he always had a pipe. He looked like the Gordon's fisherman, right? He had a beard. He had a pipe. He looked like a rug. He looked like he was cast in Jaws. He could have been the other guy with Richard Dreyfuss in Jaws when I was 7 years old. Nothing scared you more than Jaws when you're 7 years old and fish in the water and you go to the Ocean City. But Bill Burton was on my television screen when I was a little boy at my grandparents' house with a fish. And now, like 10, 11 years later, 12 years later, I'm like 18, 19 at the paper. I'll never forget this, Dennis. Jack Gibbons called me into his office, shuts the door at midnight on a Sunday night, because that's when we had all of our meetings. I didn't go to work till 11 o'clock on Sunday night. So midnight Sunday night, the door shuts, and in walks Bill Burton, who I had only met a handful of times because our hours didn't jive. Sometimes Bill would be there at 7 a.m, and I'd see him lefty too, because they were early morning people. They're fishermen. They got out of bed early, and I'd be leaving at 7 or 8 in the morning to go home and sleep, putting out the evening paper. And I got called in the office, and Bill Burton is sitting. It was always a little table in Jack's office. It was a glass office, just like you saw in All the President's Men. And Jack like literally said, you're going to be doing the fishing report. And I'm like, Jack, I don't know anything about fishing. And Bill's like,
Now you do.
son, Bill had a way with him, and he had a quiet, stately way about him, and he, the beard. And I'm like, Mr. Burton, I used to watch you on television with the red fish and the blue fish. And I mean, I was that kid for all these people. So I hope if nothing else comes off on the 25th anniversary documentary, that kid that you see on the 1986-87 press pass with my face on it with the Oriole credential and all of those pictures of the rock and roll, that I was approaching Bill Burton to write the fishing column with my name on it, and I didn't put it in a damn video. So now that you got me on all that, how you feeling about Nate Wiggins, Dennis Koulatsos?
I feel great about Nate Wiggins. He was high in my draft board. I think he fits what the Ravens do very, very well. You can't coach speed, and Nate Wiggins has plenty of speed to burn. He's a sticky corner with a high ceiling. Look, a rookie is a rookie is a rookie. Sometimes it develops, sometimes they don't, but they could have done much worse. The draft was deeper in offensive linemen. We saw a significant run earlier in first round in O-linemen. So I thought Eric DaCosta made the best pick at a position of need, right? The best player available at a position of need. With his first three picks, I didn't think he reached too far, but he had three viable corners sitting there for him when it came time for the Ravens to turn in their dance card. And I thought he picked a very good prospect. And with the podcaster there doing great things, the Marlon Humphrey and being injured last year somewhat, and Stevens on the other side, I think it was a very good pick.
Well, Dennis, if I would have had you on last week, we haven't talked in a couple weeks. You would have talked about addressing the offensive line, right? I mean, that would have been where your head would have been in all of this from the beginning. And I think it's where my head is and where Luke and I talked a lot that now we're like really onto the kid from Washington and saying they got to get a starter out of the draft probably sooner than later. I think there's no doubt they're happy about it. And listen, when you're picking 30th, things are good. These are the good times, despite the offseason bloodletting they had with coaching, with talent, with losing first round picks like Patrick Queen, that you'd rather continue on and have those players be a part of your team. But much like we talked with the baseball team, if all of these guys are going to the Hall of Fame, including Jackson Holliday and Colton Cowser, they're not going to be able to sign all of them in a mid-market team. In baseball. In football, it's a salary cap. In baseball, it's the poverty cry, right? And the $15 beers and how much money you can squeeze out of it. In football, it's level set differently, but it's also level set differently that you don't get the best corner in the draft. You get the third or fourth best corner in the draft. You don't get the best offensive lineman. You get the 10th best offensive lineman because you're just in line in that way. And it speaks to Lamar making a lot of money, them up against the cap, and them probably thinking Voorhees or Cleveland, the guys they have, that they already have starters in their team because they're living on Ronnie Stanley right now, Dennis. This is the offensive line. We're going to talk about this until the minute we see it out there functioning because it's not Zeitler and Moses but it is Linderbaum, and that's great. And we addressed that 2 years ago in the draft, and I didn't say why him. I said good. I like winning championships with Matt Burks. I know how important centers are.
There's a couple of things here, Nestor, and I think the biggest story that may be somewhat still under the radar is the signing of Derrick Henry and his impact on this offense, right? This was the biggest story in the NFL when the Ravens signed Derrick Henry. The impact of Derrick Henry signing on the offensive line is this. It's a much easier to run block than it is to pass block, particularly for younger players such as Linderbaum and Rosengarten and even Ben Cleveland and Andrew Voorhees. If they fire off the ball, this is still going to be a run-first team with Derrick Henry. Hopefully that sets up the play-action pay pass with Lamar Jackson, right? So I do think that people do forget the addition of Derrick Henry. It's going to somewhat change this offense. I don't expect the Ravens to execute as many RPOs as they did in years past with Lamar Jackson. I think he'll be more apt to tuck the ball back in, take it out, and throw it to one of his receivers. And we saw them re-sign the extend Rashard Bateman. You only need so many receivers in this offense. You don't have to have 5 number 1 draft picks at wide receiver, which is what they did last year. and it got them within the game of the championship game, of course. But I do think the addition of Derrick Henry dictated to them that they didn't need to invest a ton of assets in the offensive line.
Yeah, it's fascinating you mentioned that because if we think of whatever the transplant from Roman to Monken would be, and Lamar obviously is the middle of that, and then you bring in Andrews, you bring in a quality center. I'm talking about pieces that were here when Monken got here. What Monken has come into, and Ronnie Stanley, which is hope he bends but doesn't break. We cross our fingers. And they've really allocated the assets to the running game, which Luke is on the other side of that, much like I was probably on the other side of Lamar than he is in regard to whether you're really going to win a championship with that style of football. They've now moved away from that style of football, and they brought in a big, giant pinball of a man to really attract attention in their backfield. Um, Andrews was sort of the horse that they never got out to run last year, but that tight end position has been such an important part of Lamar's binky. I mean, really the binky going back to Shannon Sharp and Todd Heap and Tennis Pitta, right? We've had tight ends in this offense. The wide receiver thing's always been a little off track, never been able to make it work. But it feels to me like they've retooled this thing the way Monken would want it to be retooled. And I love the oxygen you're giving King Henry because I've talked about this from the beginning. And no offense to Dobbins or the injury or what they even tried. They used draft resources. They used a second round pick on Dobbins, and he could have been, should have been, would have been Keaton Mitchell and all the other things that they've had to do the last couple of years after he ripped his knee up down there in that junk in FedEx Field in Landover under the Snyder administration. Um, the big back thing, that's the focal point for me of the offseason, and I like it. There's no reason I wouldn't like it. Less Lamar, more of everything else, and more of air Lamar, and more of decoy Lamar, and keep him healthy, keep him fresh. I love the King Henry thing. If there's a reason I think they can win a championship next year, I've always been a fan of his.
Yeah, think about this. Had ifs and buts again. If we look at it from that aspect, if King Henry was in the backfield at halftime in the game against the Chiefs, you would have think they would have given him the ball more than 6 times. I think having a running back, a player of his caliber, does force the coaching staff to think a little bit clearer in terms of what is our best option of winning here, and that's handing him the ball. We saw what the impact he had in 2019 in the playoff game against us. So if they use him the same matter and fashion which the Titans did against the Chiefs, I think the Ravens have a good shot at advancing, given the fact they have a lot of pieces back. I like what they did on the defensive side of the ball. Um, this team should be competitive again deep into the playoffs this year.
Yeah, Luke and I always get sideways on the Mark Ingram thing too, because I really feel like Lamar was never, it never operated at the same level without him. And
I agree.
we could talk about Marshall Yanda too. I mean, like,
You can't take dogs out of the offense or defense and expect to be the same. Mark Ingram should have been active for the playoff run, not sitting on the bench.
Dennis speaking harsh words here in the aftermath of all this. Any room for baseball for you? I mean, what's going
You know
on
what?
with you?
I have a
You're
late
doing all
birthday.
this fancy fishing.
I have a late birthday present, so I'll be attending one of the Yankee games. First time at the stadium this year. So yes, absolutely love the Orioles and been very intrigued by their start, ups and downs.
Well, and I'm also intrigued just in a general sense to them dominating the conversation everywhere I go, right? Like, doesn't matter what room I go into, it dominates the conversation that it's Kimbrel until it's not, it's Holiday, and then it wasn't. Then it's, hey, that Rutschman guy, he's pretty good. I mean, they've just got it's a fun team.
Well, they have
It's
talent.
fun every day waiting for the games to begin. And as you saw in my documentary, it is sort of the root of all of this, right? I mean, it sits in the middle of everything I've ever sort of began and wanted for 40 years, which is the baseball team to be this good, a going concern on the lips of people, waiting for the game every night. I grew up that way. I spent the first 25 years of my life that way. It's the last 30 that have been a little messy.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Look, they're very talented. They're hyper talented. They're young. They're fun to watch, and I do think that the new ownership has energized the city. We're hopeful that we'll be able to retain some of these stars. Where under the Angelos ownership, it was a foregone conclusion by the bulk of us that they wouldn't be able to sign Rutschman or Henderson or any of these super rising young stars. And now, hopefully, the new ownership has deep pockets and are able to retain some of these young stars well into the future.
Colton Cowser, baby, the newest
Move.
superstar.
That is
Boom.
hysterical. That is great stuff. I mean, you know you can't make this stuff up with a move at the stadium nowadays.
Well, yeah, with Cowser, he's not a 1-1, so we don't, it's like Heston Kjerstad. We were only the second worst team that year, So anytime you get any of these, we've just projected a 30th pick to, go to the Hall of Fame for
Right.
cornerbacks. You get these guys to the field and they can play and they're healthy and they contribute and help you win whatever they are. They help you win. That's what makes it fun. So, hey, man, enjoy the spring weather and tell
Thank you.
everybody what's
Likewise.
going on. What's going on at Coons Baltimore for? You selling cars? Give it
Hey,
away, right?
we're swinging away. We just do what we do. We do a lot of repeat and referral business. So I want to thank our customer base for continuing their business here with Coons Ford of Baltimore and Security Boulevard. Nestor, I've been here for coming up now 19 years. So we have a lot of friends. They come in, they talk sports. It's our extended family. It's a pleasure to serve the community.
Well, I want you to get to 25 so you can have a really cool video like the one we made. You can call Greg Landry over at Blue Rock at Towson Transfers,
Okay.
and he can whip out all those pictures of you penrod bass fishing, talking lefty crane, get me to break out my Bill Burton stories here, feeling all guilty about Mr. Burton.
What
Call
one
me
day
Bill. Call me
at
Bill.
a, one day at a time, brother. That's all we can ask for.
Well, every time you drive across the Cambridge Bridge, the bridge of Cambridge,
Bill
and
Burton
you
Bridge.
see Ocean Odyssey, is the Bill Burton Fishing Pier.
Nice.
And, I want to see you holding, what do you catch on the chop tank down there? I don't know. Whatever you
Yeah,
catch down there.
I'm a freshwater fisherman. We'll have to check it out. Probably sea bass, I would think.
All right. He did my show on Friday. Oh, the other sea bass, not Richmond. Okay, different. Richmond Carly. The other sea bass.
The other sea bass.
Married into the Bay Cafe family, So like everybody, it's Smaltimore, Dennis. We're all in it
baby.
together. We're all in it together.
What high school did you go to? Never mind a college, right? What high school did you go to? That's what we're all about.
I just
It's
keep
fun.
thinking with Mr. Rubenstein buying the team, and I'm not going to call him that. I'm just doing that till I get a press credential. David or Dave, call me. I don't know what Mr. I don't know what to call him, but there have been more Luis Aparicio shout outs. Even Palmer told a story of Louis beaning a player in the head on the second base breakup because Louis had been spiked before. So like I got to get my press credential back just so I can talk to Jim Palmer about this stuff. But
Yeah.
like the whole Louis Aparicio thing, I'm holding on that I'm a real media member, Dan. I'm hoping they let me back in.
Well, there's no reason why they shouldn't. Nestor, the Angelos regime and your relationship with him, that should be water under the bridge, and hopefully everybody can be a adult and move forward.
Fresh start. What's it? New chapter. Next chapter.
Look, the Orioles are better with Nestor Aparicio covering him with press credentials than not. I swear on that one. Absolutely,
Well,
you can't argue. You can't argue that fact.
Well, I appreciate that. That's very nice of you to stand up for me, Dennis.
The same thing with the Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens are better when they have you covering them than not, in depth, not peripherally.
Chad Steele didn't think so, but that's, here we, it is what it is. Hey, we'll have plenty of time for that. You sell cars, you sell fish. I'm catching up on some concerts. I'm catching up on some ball games. I'm catching up on Kentucky Derby. Dennis is out at Coons Baltimore Ford. We're going to be bringing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour back out to Fade Lee's in the aforementioned Lexington Market, the new Lexington Market. We're doing the Crab Derby and the Crab Races on the 16th. We're back down there with our Pac-Man scratch-offs. I am Nestor. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore positive, whether they want us to or not.